1, 2, 3. All right, hello everyone. I'm here with Justin. Hello, Justin.
Hey, Dor.
Thank you for joining me on this interview. I wanted to bring you on this interview so you can talk a little bit about what you're doing here on this island, 𝕿𝕙𝕒𝕟𝕟𝕜. I see you as a local wizard that have so much knowledge about different things, about plants and about the culture here, and also about your way of living, where it's kind of different than modern culture living. And I want to kind of use you in this video as inspiration that for people that are watching that, so they can hear some of your stories and how you started also in this nomadic lifestyle, ended up here in 𝕿𝕒𝕟𝕒𝕟𝕜 Island. How long are you here?
I've been here now 6 years. So yeah, today, actually, this day that we're doing this interview is exactly 6 years. I arrived here today 6 years ago, starting the beginning of my 7th year. What a journey it's been on. I would have never thought, if you had told me 6 years ago, that I would still be here and be doing what I do and doing what I love with so much passion, with so much depth. I almost wouldn't have believed you, but it's a beauty, this journey of magic that it takes us on, synchronicities and magic.
Yeah, we are here in 𝕿𝕐𝕐. It's a chocolate paradise. It's a magical place. And I know that, like, today I see you around almost running this place. You're doing so much work connecting with everyone here, and you have such a big part of whatever is happening here. You're also doing the chocolate tours. And I heard a legend that you were started here on one of these hammocks. And and that was actually your place of staying, your place of sleeping.
Yeah,
Can you
that's
share
true.
that?
When I first arrived here, I had an intention, which was, can I live outside of this global financial system? Basically, to put it in easier terms, can I live and not spend money? And can I create a different way of living that is earth-based, that's natural, that's holistic, that's regenerative, and that's sustainable? And so part of that story was, as I was traveling, I definitely had no home. This place took me in, and while it started to work with chocolate, I got very interested in this. And so I spent my first 9 months staying in a hammock just like this one, and started to develop and learn a lot of the things that I now teach and share about.
Yeah, and the chocolate tours here are legendary, amazing, and everyone are talking about them. And this place also is very developed right now. They have the chocolate factory here, and they produce a lot of chocolate, and they grow their own cacao. And I know that it wasn't like this when you just arrived here. It was. Can you share something about how it was in the beginning here for people that visit?
Wow. To say this place has grown organically would be just an understatement. It's just with total flow, for not having any expectations, just every day showing up, doing your best, and always moving. This place is nonstop growing. And that's, I think, definitely a credit to the people that work here. The people that live on this island and around this community are some of the strongest, most incredible people I've ever had the fortune of being around, and they're really my teachers. Nature, the trees, the plants, the water, everything, they're my teachers as well. But definitely credit is due, with a lot of respect, to the amazing locals that live on this island, that have shared so much of their story with me. And it's from their stories that I felt inspired to continue to live, to put forth this effort to walk the walk and live this life that I'm living today.
And yeah, and you actually are from the stories. And what I wanted to get to, can you share a little bit about what happened to you? Just one day decided to leave, or what happened there? And also maybe later, what was the purpose of it?
Yeah, so it was not a spontaneous decision at all. It was an accumulation of the way that I was living in the U.S., and the just heavy consumer society in which I was living, and what it put value on, that I realized that those values that they were promoting, and honestly those values that I grew up learning and being taught myself, weren't values I actually had. They weren't what I wanted, they weren't my values, and I was seeking to learn, to experience, and to get out of that culture and to uh, actually share my values and actually foster those values that I hold today.
Hmm. So you basically got out of the house with tons of money, with all your stuff, with not
None of
really
that.
sure.
So when I left, I actually just gave away all my stuff. Almost all of them I donated to charity. A couple things I sold, like my car. And when I left, all I had on me, all my property was just in my backpack, and so that I would have no reason to go back. I didn't want to give myself an out. I wanted to go on the road. I didn't know for how long, but I knew that I had to find this journey outside the place in which I was born, the place in which I grew up, and it was the only way.
Wow, leaving everything behind, burning the boats. And what was the purpose of that? Like what made you go suddenly and leave everything?
Well, I guess it starts by looking at the there's this why and then there's this how. The why is simple, actually. I was seeing what is going on in the modern world today, coming from sort of what I consider to be the empire, this head of consumerism and just nonstop consumption. That only every process there is linear, and nothing is actually sovereign. I feel like the U.S. has this image as the country of the the land of choices, the land of potential, the land of whatever. But it's this illusion, actually. It's this illusion of choice. You
Yes.
walk into a supermarket and you might see 50 different types of cereal, but isn't it all owned by 1 or 2 corporations? Is in fact everything in that entire supermarket owned by 5 to 10 corporations? And cookie cutter that across the U.S. It doesn't matter which city you're in. They all look the same. They're all designed the same. It's for this standardization so that people feel comfortable, so that they continue to consume. But what if there was a different game to play? And when I say game, I mean like life, right? Like I don't actually think that there's a wrong way to live a life, and those who choose that life, I just have nothing but love and compassion for it. But it's a tough one because you don't actually have freedom. If you want to own a home, what do you need to do? You got to go to a bank to get a mortgage for 30 years. Who can actually afford to buy a home in cash, right? I don't know anybody personally that
No,
can do that.
no.
And so you're in debt, and you're in debt with, student loans and credit card debt and housing debt and a car loan, and all the food that you buy is all purchased from supermarket, which is all coming imported from different parts of the U.S. or different parts of the world. Nothing is actually grown in your area. Therefore, if anything ever happened, you are not protected. You are not sovereign. You have nothing. You have
You're
nothing actually.
screwed.
Yeah,
Basically.
you're screwed. So the why was take myself out of their system, right? But then the other is, I guess, to what other system, right? Because
Did you know?
no, I
Okay.
didn't. Because of course I thought basically this is how it works, and nothing I can do can actually change it. And traveling, you can't also if when you are traveling and you're actually moving from country to country, you can't not avoid participating in the global economy. You want to go to another country, you have to take a bus, a taxi. You need money to travel around. I mean, there's no denying that there's at some point a priority in having some amount of money.
There's an engagement with the money game world.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? And the fact that this exists, it's whether it's I think it's a point of how much are we going to participate in that system, and how can we minimize our participation in that system. And so after traveling through Mexico and Guatemala and all
Again, minimizing our participation because of the things that you mentioned before in the beginning.
Right.
That's the why to minimize.
Exactly. And I started to see people playing a different game. And I started to realize that this different, so to speak, game that people are wanting to play are removing themselves from these systems, and they are creating a more closed net, circular-based system, or a holistic system where whatever their needs are met within their community. Okay?
So you're starting to travel in Central America, you meet in all these communities, and you see there's something else going on.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of game world.
Yeah. So the fundamental difference is, well, why? What's so wrong with the other system? And for me, it's that the other system is fraught with lies that this will lead to happiness. And what is the ultimate goal is not to live a satisfied, happy, fulfilling life. But there's no goal, actually. There's no end point. It's like Alan Watts would say, it's the dance, it's the music that's the point. The point is that we wake up every day And we get a chance to live out a day, and that is the point. And whatever we choose to do in that day is what enriches our life. We don't need money to actually do any of that stuff. What do we actually need in life? I think these are the three biggest priorities. The biggest priority is time, because honestly, if you don't have time, you're dead, right? So the amount of time that we have and how we can increase the value of our time is incredibly important.
So what do you mean by time? Because it's kind of vague. Because I have time. What you tell me that I don't have time? Like,
we all have time. If you didn't, you'd be dead.
Yeah.
But how can you create value or maximize the value of that time? Imagine, for example, as I used to do, I worked a couple years in an office, okay? And I did this projection to my future, and I'm thinking, well, society told me to get a job and work till I retire. So I should be taking the next 40 years of my life and devoting that to making money.
Yep.
And that's what society told me is the best use of my time. Well, I realized that is not the best use of my time, because all I ever wanted to do was go outside and be in nature. So the maximizing the value of my time is to go outside and be in nature, okay?
Okay.
Or to eat, nourishing food, and to dance to good music, and to love, and all of these beautiful things that life has to offer. That's all within time. So maximizing the value of that time. The second most important thing, I think, is health. Because if you don't have good health, well, then you can't also maximize the value of your time. Imagine you have a chronic disease that prevents you from going out and seeing the world, okay? So now the amount of time, or the value of time, is naturally diminished. So in order to maximize that time we have, we need to maximize the health that we have. The fact that I have 2 healthy legs means that I can walk up a volcano that a car can't drive to. And I can never see the view from the top of the volcano without these 2 legs to take me there. And so making sure that I'm taking care of my body well, that I'm eating nourishing, healthy food.
So your health help you to create more value to your time, which helps you to increase that value, the first one.
Correct. And most of the world doesn't have the same model as the U.S. when it comes to healthcare, but the healthcare system in the U.S. is fundamentally broken. It's a profit-driven industry. And the food that they serve you is going to make you sick, and then the solution to that sickness is they're going to give you pills, and you're going to be stuck in this loop where then there's a third party making money off that.
Yep.
So the incentive there is actually not to make you healthy, it's to make you sick. And I see that. And I was seeing that how I was living in the U.S. as well was nurturing more disease and less wellness.
Yeah, that's I feel in the last few years is like becoming more, there's more awareness around this.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in my own personal case, I haven't been to a doctor in 7 years. I haven't taken any pharmaceutical medicine in 7 years. I've rarely been sick in 7 years. And if I do get sick for like a day, it's only usually a day, there's all this medicine around me that I've come to learn from the locals here how to use in different ways in order to heal myself. So if I need an antibiotic, I'm not going to go take an antibiotic. I'm going to go take a plant that works as an antibiotic and has all these other alkaloids, which are also going to help me kill parasites and worms and funguses and anything else that can really hurt me here.
Yeah.
So the medicine is growing around me. Those are the biggest priorities. And on top of all that, from there, maybe somewhere 3rd, 4th, or 5th into the top 10, you can put like money as a priority. The problem with modern culture is that they put money as the top priority. And they put it over your health and your time. And so people want to sacrifice the time and the health that they have in order to add more zeros to their bank account. But to what end? So that they can retire at 65 or whatever.
Yeah.
At that point, you have less time to live your life. And I would argue that a 65-year-old would not be in as optimal health as somebody who's in their 20s, 30s, or 40s.
Yeah.
So you reduce your health and your time in order to make more money. Okay, that's what...
So your priority is wrong there.
Exactly, that's how I feel.
You're basically shooting your own leg by like deprioritizing what's important.
In a word, yes. And so what do we actually need to be happy then? Right? If money is not the thing that makes us happy, which it isn't, you can't buy, sell, or trade happiness. Happiness is created within. Then I feel that there's 4 pillars of happiness. And this is where it gets kind of confusing, because when you talk about happiness, you have a million different opinions in the world, and I think that all of them come from some validity. Except if you think you can actually buy happiness, in which case, no, that's not real. But I look at it like this. Anybody can be happy because the truth is happiness comes from within. But if you support that happiness with 4 things, then the happiness inside of you is like a fire. But it's a fire that doesn't burn. It's a fire that purifies, it's a fire that brightens and enlightens everything around you. And so you can have enough of it where you can actually share that with people without depleting yourself. And so what do you really need? Well, we need healthy food. This makes a lot of sense. The food that we eat is going to affect our stomach. It's going to affect our emotional level. If you eat crap, you're going to feel like crap. If you eat nourishing, healthy fruits and vegetables that you grow on your own land, you're going to feel like strong, healthy, clear, and amazing.
Yep.
So I think food is definitely a big piece of this. The second is, it's actually a two-sided coin. It's restfulness. We need to sleep. You sleep for 4 hours and notice how you feel, and sleep for 8 or 9 hours. So I think we in a lot of modern culture, people are not putting importance in restfulness, taking time, resting, sleeping, people take pills to go to sleep and pills to wake up.
Yeah.
You kind of lose yourself in the fact that we will sleep. Our natural rhythm is to sleep. We need it. So I think sleep is important. But the other side of that coin is consciousness or awareness, which is in the awakened state, which we are now, add up as the amount of seconds in which you're actually present in that moment. And our minds drift. We think about what happened in the past. We make plans for the future. That's all fine. But if we get stuck in those worlds, then we're not actually here. And so this phrase, stop and smell the roses, people should take it literally, because what are you doing when you smell a rose? You're 10 seconds sniffing a rose, and then for those 10 seconds, you're only there in that moment. Add up 10 seconds over and over and over again. Yoga, meditation, journaling about gratitude, going for a walk in the woods, just throughout the day. That's what I like to do. I like to walk around and see all the nature and then put myself in the present. So I'm actually enjoying this very moment and not thinking about the past and not planning for the future. It's just right here. And I think the more that we add up those seconds in days, the more we have awareness and consciousness, and then we sleep well at night. And I think these are a pillar of happiness. The third is authentic human relationships. We are social creatures. A 10-second hug lights our brain up like a Christmas tree. We need to have community around us. We can't all do it alone. And so having authentic relationships is the key there. A lot of modern society is losing that touch. Technology, I think, is drifting us further away. To what extent, I don't know. But with everyone on their phone, it's not you can't have a real authentic relationship when everyone's always on their phone. And, there's a time when we all reach a point when you just put away your phones, you cook a nice dinner with your friends and your family, and you just have nice talk. How that's going to feel on your body and your happiness when you accumulate those things is like, oh, duh, that's going to feel good. Why? Because we need authentic human relationships. And the fourth is to be outside in nature, because we are nature. You can't avoid this. We're not on top of it. We're not outside of it. We're fundamentally inside of nature, a part of nature, and we need to be outside of nature. And if you go running in a gym on a treadmill and you burn calories, and you burn the same exact calories by going on a jog or a walk through the woods, your body might, on the statistics of that might say the same on paper, right? But that's not the same thing, and our brain knows the difference. So when I was living in the US and I was spending a couple years working in an office, I was realizing that through the daily patterns of my 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, I was indoors all the time during the week. I mean, from Monday to Friday, I was going from my apartment to the garage, to the car, sitting in traffic, to an office, home, cooking dinner, watching TV, and repeating the next day, Monday through Friday. And only in the weekends, I was actually going outside. It's so easy to get into a rhythm where your reality is putting yourself in boxes, a house or an apartment, but we can't do that long term. I think it messes up how our brain and we actually deal with emotions, how we deal with ourselves, how we feel about ourselves. And that's why I think when you realize that so much of what the modern world has promoted, and I think not from the bottom up, but from the top down, it's the antithesis of all these things. It's unhealthy food, it's poor sleep, and encouraging, not awareness or consciousness, distractions. I think the US is the best place to get distracted by, what is it you love? Music, fashion, movies. The US has the culture, and as they've exported that around the world with the standard American diet and their ideas of consumerism and linear supply chains, is that they don't value what actually makes us happy. They don't value the food, they don't value the rest or the consciousness, they don't value the authentic relationships, and they don't value being outside in nature. They actually try to destroy all those things so that you can feel that need with maybe buying stuff. And so that's not a sustainable system. And I realized that in order for me to do the work I needed to do, I needed to actually leave that and find another way. But what also fits into that is, yeah, traveling can help you see and find new ideas. But that is also can't necessarily, in my case, I'll just talk about my personal case. I didn't find that to be really the best way forward. As I traveled, I realized that the way that I needed to live my life in order to get out of this was to find a place where I can actually put down roots. And so I can simplify my life and what I choose to consume and what I don't, and create the systems and the values within my own community that reflected what I actually want to live in. And here I found myself 6 years ago today on this island of 𝕒𝕟𝕒𝕟𝕜. This island made up of volcanoes, but it's in a freshwater lake with spring water, super important. I love the water here, it's so great.
Very clean, you can drink from the tap.
I drink from all the taps, it's amazing water. Fertile soil, beautiful community, and this connection to the land, the history, the people allowed me to really feel like myself again. And I think that, you know, when you look at the skyrocketing rates of mental health issues in the US, and there's a huge spectrum of that, right? But I think a high percentage of people, if you actually ask them, would tell you that they don't feel satisfied or happy in their life.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
There's 60% of women above 40s take antidepressant pills.
Really?
In the States.
Wow, that's
Something
super
like that.
high. I would guess actually around 50%. So that fits what I was feeling too. So how is it all possible? Well, one of the things that was one of my goals was how to live outside of the economic system. Is it possible to actually go and not spend any money? Is ultimately the thing.
Yeah.
Challenging, but in doses possible. Now, how I was able to do this is I first found a situation where I can kind of do a bit of exchange of my energy and time. And actually, my first 9 months here, I slept in a hammock.
That's why we're doing the interview from a hammock,
Yeah.
symbolic for this moment 6 years later.
Hammock side chats, great place to relax. And I was foraging for food. I was growing some vegetables in the garden, and I was trying to keep my expenses to not spend money every day, and then try to be like, can I spend $10 in a week, $20 in a week? Is it even possible? And actually, that first year, I don't track it now, but that first year I tracked every single dollar I spent, and because I had to do border runs every 3 months, so I had to leave the island every 90 days, and that first year I spent $300, which is under $1 a day.
Wow.
And a lot of
That's
that was
crazy.
just on transportation getting there and back.
Just so you get a scale, when someone from modern culture, when I was in modern culture before my trip in South America, the first trip, almost 10 years ago, I asked how much I'm gonna spend there, and they told me the average is to start from $600 a month to start with, not including travel planes and everything.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
I would say most people here spend, if you're traveling on a budget, like $20 to $30 a day, right? Up to over $100 a day, depending on your lifestyle.
I mean, just as in Nicaragua is cheap, so you can find a private room for $20. You can find dorms for $10. But if you go to Costa Rica, then dorms can start from $40.
Yeah, but look at how the locals live here. They don't pay rent. They don't have a mortgage either. Why? Because they have land in their family that they have, and they have that land to build their house on and to grow food on.
Yeah.
So they're sovereign. As far as I'm concerned, they are sovereign human beings. Because if the rest of the world crashed down and all the money went away, who's actually free? The one living in the city, or the one that lives in the countryside that has their house paid for, built themselves, and food that they still know how to grow themselves?
Yeah. Food that they're growing, but also, there's mango trees just falling everywhere, mangoes,
Totally.
every kind of, you can harvest so many things here.
And if you create systems where, no one here grows like lawn grass. It's almost like it's barely an existent thing. In front of everyone's home, you have the mango tree, the avocado tree, you have the bananas or the platanos, and you have maybe some chickens running around your front yard. Imagine you have an avocado tree, which if you don't know, whoever was watching this, avocados can dump hundreds of avocados a year. So with one tree, you can have more than you actually need to feed yourself. So imagine you trade those avocados with your neighbor for some of their extra mangoes or some of their extra platanos. And another neighbor, a few houses down, this year had an extra harvest of rice, and so they trade some rice for those avocados as well. But imagine not doing this 1, 2, or 3 times. Imagine you start to do this thousands of times over thousands of people every single day. None of these things go onto a spreadsheet as creating wealth, right? Because how do most countries define the economy? It's like basically, and maybe I'm generalizing too much, but basically it's how much debt do you have and how much are you consuming? And then they look at those numbers and like, okay, the economy is this big. You don't have to have a GDP at all. You can just minimize your life, create the value that you need within your own local community, and then create or barter and make trades. And then all of a sudden you find yourself living in a place where you don't pay rent, you don't pay for food, you don't pay for medicine, that's also free, human right, but you can also grow your own medicine as well that's growing around you. And you know, I know I'm wearing a pink shirt today, or a nice shirt, but like I haven't bought clothes in years. People donate clothes. Why? Because there's this game where like people own more clothes than they ever will need, right? And then so, you know, I haven't bought any clothes in the last 6 years, and anytime I get holes in my shirt or whatever, there's like always a lost and found somewhere, or people are just, hey, I have this extra clothes. So what do we actually need in life, right? I would argue shelter, food, medicine, clothing, community. Non-negotiable, because otherwise, and then from that, once you achieve that as your non-negotiable, the thing that works in that system is what we're all trying to live in, which is peace and happiness, right? This is like the most peaceful place I've ever lived in. The lack of violence is amazing, and I don't take this for granted, because not everywhere in the world is inherently safe from violence. But because everyone's basic needs are met here, they're not playing the scarcity game. They're playing the abundant game. It's not the, you know, they used to play this I win, you lose game, right? That was like kings and peasants, right? And then they're like, well, let's play capitalism where it's I win, you win. Isn't that better?
We both actually compromise a little bit to win, because I need to work a 9-to-5 job and be in the office all day.
Right, and then,
So
but then
it's not a really win-win.
humans get in between this, and they say, well, I win, you win, but you know, I want to win more than you win. And they still create this sort of difference, this scarcity. Exactly. What if we played I share, you share, right? Which is I give everything I have to other people, and they create this circular economy. The problem of this is scalability. My argument against it is we shouldn't be scaling to a global level.
We can have like a little nano nations where inside these little game worlds, circular economy works, and they engage with other game worlds.
Because if you're saying, well, how can you? I'm living in Europe. I want avocados. They're coming from Central or South America. How do I get them there? Right? You can't do that in a holistic way. I've tried looking into it. Like, can you do that? No. There's always some waste that is involved in any sort of linear supply chain. So the best solution then, and again, it's not to say, it sounds radical, but I would love to say, okay, 100%, we're going to solve it, and this is how we do it. I don't think it's solvable in that way, because no matter how much, I'm just going to pick a company, but I can probably list 100. No matter how much I dislike Coca-Cola, they're not going to go away. What is Coca-Cola actually doing, by the way? They're the biggest polluter of plastic in the world, and their main thing is water. So they exploit water and they exploit plastic. Their main product, Coca-Cola, doesn't serve any public good. In fact, it's poisonous on the human body, highly addicting, and yet it's a massive corporation and it's all over the world. Does their moral right to exist still exist? Like, do they actually have a moral right to exist? I would argue no, but my argument is meaningless because they're still going to exist. But what I can do is not give them any more money. And go out of my way in order to make sure that all the other brands that they own, I'm also not giving them money either. Because if I don't give money to Coca-Cola, which, man, I can't tell you the last time I drank Coca-Cola or any of their products, it's been so long, I have the resources to then share with you, or share with any of my other friends who are living in this community, who are creating their magic, or giving their skills to others. You know, you teach you share your knowledge and give workshops. There's value there. If I were to pay you for one of your workshops, or your time to coach or whatever the other skills you have, that is going to create a lot more value to me, even back into this economy, than if I were to just give that money to Coca-Cola. 100%, right? So if we can create these systems where we consume less, we minimalize, we create sustainable systems and holistic systems, we've created now interdependence and correlations. So now we have authentic human relationships. The food we're eating is local from our own community. And that means that not just the farmers are going to have a more dignified and thriving wage for growing that healthier local food, but also we're going to have healthier bodies and lower long-term health costs. So we're going to be healthier, okay? We're going to be outside in nature all day long, because this is where we need to be, playing around and working to make our livelihood. And we're going to, because of all that, that flame of happiness is going to never actually extinguish. It's going to stay this like fierce passion that you have abundance, and so does everybody else. And I think that I'm convinced that this is achievable for anybody, but I'm also convinced that it's not achievable for everybody. That doesn't
Right now, the way they are right now.
Exactly.
If they're not going to change their origin point where they're interacting with this knowledge.
Correct. Because if your day-to-day is to go to an office, to then on the weekends go shopping and run errands, and you love your life, I'm so happy for you. But if that's what you're doing, you're not going to ever play a holistic game. You're not going to ever play the gift economy. You're always going to be stuck in this loop, and you're always going to be in some way managing consumerism and debt.
Yeah. Justin, I want
Clásico chai que llevo con especies de chai como canela, cardamomo, clavo de olor y más.
Y no hay probado,
No sé si tenemos los bares y proveedores, no sé. Ella está hoy ahorita haciendo el café y café y cardamomo que está haciendo los bares. Es Mayela y Janira, dos hermanas, los maestras de chocolate, chocolateras. El corazón de su lugar es eso.
Tenés que cuidarlas definitivamente.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Hola.
Shall we continue?
Yes. All right, so just to put things more into context, and we shifted locations here.
Yep.
So we talked about how, for example, like a company like Coca-Cola, so there's almost no legitimacy to what they're doing, but modern culture keep empowering them. So every person actually that keep using their energy, their time, all those things that you talked about before that actually are more valuable for us, most valuable for us, as you keep invested them in corporation like Coca-Cola that are basically destroying the planet in the fastest rate possible. So we're basically taking energy and resources from what actually would work for our happiness and putting them into something that destroys the planet. And by participating in the modern culture game world, maybe it's more of my take on what you said. And what I wonder is about, so your journey, you talked for a while how part of this need to happens when you root yourself in somewhere. Because right now we're here in 𝕨𝕗𝕚, and you've been here for how many years?
6.
6 years. And you really grew with this place. So for example, the place that you see behind us, El Pital, is this vegan and natural cacao paradise factory and hostel. And so you kind of grew up with this place. And so from what you said, you need to grow, but I also see a possibility about doing this, about investing in this different kind of game worlds, or this different kind of culture, what I call next culture. Also, if you're a nomad, also if that's how you're going. So I know for you, you started as a nomad, what you talked about in Central America, and then you kind of reached this place, which was kind of the promised land, and you started to root yourself here, and you saw how many of these things can work. And I also, from talking to you, I saw how much knowledge did you gain about the local plants, and you have your own land now that you plant a lot of stuff on, and like stuff like you almost don't have trash. Like I know that you have one bag of trash a year, something crazy like that. So
Half of that's not even mine. It's stuff I pick up on the road when I see it.
yeah. So how would you see that happening? How did you saw this shift happening for you as you started to be a nomad? And then maybe you can share more about how this has happened when you started to root here. So for people that watching that, like what can they really use in that by listening to your story?
Well, what traveling taught me definitely was the experience of other cultures and other people, and to witness the beauty in nature and to realize that
I know, just
Yeah.
just by the way, I know that you're doing the cacao tours here, which are amazing. You should definitely check them out if you're coming on this island. And people are really, you're getting so much from that tour, not only about cacao, but really about how the stuff that you're talking about now. How can we shift to a different kind of like thinking about what we consume and everything. And so now you're doing this tours about in the island, but I remember you told me when you started, you went all to all these cacao plantations, and you saw how it works there. So
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, these chocolate tours, you know when you feel really proud about something and it's the tour itself is more than what it is. That's how I feel about the chocolate tours and how they've sort of developed, because every single tour is an opportunity to plant a seed in someone's mind to think about and nourish and grow. And these seeds take us, because once you start pulling back the threads of cacao, you start to realize it intersects history, religion, philosophy, politics, economics, so much of how we've got to this world within context. You can start to see how cacao has been a part of that story, or where cacao has fit into these stories of both modern culture and ancient culture. Cacao, for those of you listening at home, maybe if you didn't know this, cacao was the oldest currency of Central America. Before they were trading in money, coins, or anything precious, way more valuable than gold even, they were trading in cacao beans. Cacao was a huge part of who they believe they come from. It was called cacao, it comes from the language 𝕒𝕙𝕒𝕟𝕠 Maya, which means food of the gods, and it was literally their currency. And with this currency, you cannot have society with millionaires or billionaires living in it, can you? You have to create a gift economy. You have to create a closed loop system where everyone is sort of feeding and nourishing themselves with the things that they agree is valuable. Something that you can eat, that is nourishing, that opens our heart, that brings us happiness, that shows us love, which are all these things that cacao absolutely does. So, but traveling through the world, I've seen how there's two sides of the story. Nowadays, cacao is having its Renaissance movement, and people are using it for more spiritual purposes, like in rituals or ceremonies. People are using cacao as a health food, not as a junk food. But you also have Nestle, Mars, and Hershey, and the exploitation of farmers around the world who are making far too little for growing cacao. And I've gotten to see that side of things. I've got to see how cacao is actually traveling around the world and how it's arriving from one place to another place, and how these economies of scale are designed to do exactly what they're doing. They're designed to keep the exploitation intact. Most of you guys probably have heard that there is child slavery still today in cacao, which is absolutely true. It's over 1.5 million children, the average age being 7 to 16, that are working illegally as child slaves. Right? Often, a lot of them are trafficked from their homes and sold into slavery.
40 million slaves around the world, current today.
Absolutely. To say that the system is broken is disingenuous. The system is working exactly as it's designed to work, and that is part of the problem. But in order to recognize that, it's important to realize, well, how, not just, of course, I can often start to throw a million solutions, but just to acknowledge that the problem itself is the system and it's working as it's designed to work, it takes a lot to accept that as an answer. To realize that these corporations, multinational corporations, The ruling class, if you want to use that word, are designing systems in order to keep this exploitation intact. Okay, they're not out here for our best interests. They never have been. In fact, I don't even think they're necessarily out there for their best interests. I think they're out for the interests of what they think. It's like this, they create this fabricated image of what their goals are, and that's what they try to achieve.
Yeah.
To the extent of making money, I suppose.
Because
one of their goals.
It's these people that come in from modern culture and their value system is all fucked up anyways, to the extent of like 10% out of every CEO is a psychopath. That's how much the value system is fucked up.
Like that's that.
Yeah, so that then like they go on to creating these systems that are not even beneficial for them, even for the people that play out in those systems.
It's beneficial if your ultimate goal is making money and the ends justify the means.
Yeah, not caring about anyone on the way.
Nor the environment, right? But that's obviously not how things are. We live in a natural world. We are natural people. Everything around us is natural, technically, right? But yet, there's this massive thing we call the global economy. It's very real. People interact with it all the time. But at the end of the day, it's an illusion that we give value, we allow existing because of the value that we put into it. Because we say it's existing and at any given time I can just walk into a supermarket and buy X, Y, and Z. And it's always going to be there. And we just forget all the steps and people involved that brought it from a farm to a table, right? Because we're so disconnected from it. And if there was child slavery in my backyard or your backyard, you would not accept this.
Yep.
But if it's happening in some remote place on the other side of the world, it's easier for people to, and I think this is human psychology, no fault to anybody, but I think it's really easy to let it go and just forget about it and not be impacted by that injustice and all these injustices that are happening all over the world. And
a question to ask yourself would be, would you marry someone that is a slave owner?
Good question. And it's a shame because we live in this fractured supply chain that brings us all these commodities, that because we don't know the source of things, it's easier for us to get disconnected from. It's easier for us to accept buying a Nestle bar knowing that very possibly some of the cacao was picked by children. The same way, because we don't know. We don't know. And this can be applied to everything, cotton. Maybe somebody knows the retail shop that they bought their clothes in. Fair. That's easy. Maybe you can read the tag and it tells you the country or whoever manufactured the shirt. But who grew the cotton? You see, we'll never know that story. But imagine if we knew that story. And imagine if that farmer was my neighbor that lived 5 kilometers away and all of that was kept within my local economy. I have much more value. I personally would put a ton of more value on a shirt if I knew that the cotton was grown and manufactured and sold within my own local community. Yeah. And when I see that, I acknowledge that it has not just value, there's a I don't know, how do I say this? There's like a spirit in it, right?
It's the same, we just had an interview with Nicoles that worked here, and she shared exactly that story about a necklace she bought from a local woman, and she wanted to buy because she knows her sons, and she knows like that.
Exactly. So if we live in this modern world where you're buying and selling from all these corporations, all that money is going up, all that money you're actually sacrificing your time and your health in order to earn is then leaving, and it's going very far away, just sitting there in pockets by these massive corporations that then can purchase all the means of producing more of that at scale, okay? But if all the money that you earned, acknowledging that to some extent it's a priority, not top 1, 2, 3, or 4, maybe even 5, but it's there. If you spent that money instead on increasing the value of your time that you have and increasing or optimizing your health, then I feel like we can just live simpler lives, more natural lives, more grounded lives, and have everything that we need in order to have our basic needs met and therefore live peaceful lives.
So I'm going to make it a bit hard for you, Justin.
Sure.
So you said that one of the 3 values in the bottom one was money. So what do you mean by why you're calling it a value? Like
It's not. Sorry, it's not a value. It's a, let's say it's a priority.
priority, yeah. So what do you mean by saying that? Because really, like, and I had this conversation with you about circular economies, that you almost don't need money. Like I can exchange my avocados with the neighbors, whatever cotton and stuff. So it's like, why do you call it money? Maybe you mean like resources or like food. Like what are you?
Because there's idealism and then there's practicality. If I wanted to, and I can, and I do, eat 100% local from this island, not just from Nicaragua, but if I really said, okay, I'm only eating from the island, I can do that. Which, if you live in a city, you can't say that, which is a shame, because it doesn't insulate you from externalities like war, famine, climate change, and pandemics that happen on other places in the world. But if you did, you can do that. But at the same time, we do live in this global economy that people have given enough value to so that it actually exists. Why do I need money sometimes? Because once a year I pay taxes, which I'm fine about, because I know the taxes in most cases go to, education, roads, healthcare for the people here, and I'm more than happy to pay into that system to make sure that all of my community has their basic needs met. Sometimes you need to travel. Once every few months, maybe you have to go to another city to do some errands, or you broke something in your house and you have to go to the tool place and you have to buy a new tool. Because here on this island, there's a ton of fruit and vegetables growing, but there's no factories here. No one's making plastic, no one's making screwdrivers, nails, light bulbs. So, until we get into the closed loop system, that's why I say easier said than done, because once you start to scale it up, you start to realize it's hard to play that game. It's harder. So I could take a radical approach and say, eliminate money, right? And see how far it gets you. But as I said, even when I tried to, in my life, simplifying it to the extent that I did, I still wound up in a whole year spending around $300. And that number wasn't zero. It was not possible for me to get to zero because the other people around me didn't agree to those same values. And therefore, the best medium of exchange was some money.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing that this can go to is that the more people move into this nano-nation, little communities that are more they're more focused on circular economies, they're going to be less of this need to use money, because also the people that you're going to meet on the way would be like, you know what, I will take you in my car and host you in my house if I can come to your house in your community later this year. So then you need less money like that. So it's like the more people move to next culture, there's going to be a reduction in using the money game.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think the point is reduction and not elimination, because elimination of money, let's not demonize money for just as a broad stroke, because it has a useful tool. It's a useful tool in society. It's about placing it at the top of your priority list, or in the top 2 of your priority list.
You mean at the bottom?
I think if you the problem is putting it as your top priority.
That's
the problem, is doing that. Because I can give another example because of what happened within my experience here on this island. Like people all over the world, a couple years ago, I think there was a pandemic. This is what I heard in the news. So what I actually experienced here was that tourism shrunk to there wasn't this influx of people coming in and out, and people were mostly staying back where they was, because there's a piece of this island, about 30% of the economy is tourism, services, and hospitality, and about 70% agriculture. So the 30% that is services and tourism and hospitality shrunk a lot during that pandemic. But what did we see here? What did I experience, and what did my community experience? We didn't experience scarcity, fear, quarantine, nothing, and nobody went hungry, nobody went homeless. People went back, and what did they do? They created the circular economy. And it was locals and foreigners all together. The group of people that chose to stay here during that time, we had a magical year because there wasn't new money coming in. And even the foreigners that were here, most of them were not working online. they were literally just somewhat living on their savings a bit as they're making it work and trading what they had. So I saw a lot of people giving, offering exchanges for massages, exchanges for jewelry that they had that they were trying to get rid of. There was a lot of clothing exchanges, and nobody selling clothing, but a lot of clothing swaps. And I saw locals trading eggs for chicken and fish for, rice and beans, because also those are things that they grow here. And as a result of this, nobody suffered, nobody went hungry. In fact, agriculture grew on the island during that year, because those that might have lost their jobs or did lose their jobs, who were working in restaurants or hotels, they have land, family land, that they live on and can grow food on. So everyone went back to the basics. I can grow rice and beans, I can grow sesame and sell it outside, I can grow coffee and export it, or cacao and export it, or I can grow those things and trade them with my neighbors if I don't need to play the money game. And to that extent, I saw amazing things, and I got to experience and feel what a true economy community looks like when they're all supporting each other and they're all coming together. And as a result of that, everyone stayed super healthy, and we all it was magic.
Yeah, I believe you. It's a very magical place, and I can see how it can happen here when, so like you just pass down the streets here and you see the locals in their houses still kind of living the farm kind of lifestyle. And what I wonder how it was for you in the beginning as a nomad, like, so going back to the beginning of the interview, something made you just shoot yourself into this new kind of reality and sold your stuff, get to nothing, and then you started traveling. So how it was like for you, just for people that watching it and they're maybe a step back from really settling somewhere and start engaging in circular economies in their own village, or creating that in their village and their communities. It's like people that are traveling, people that are nomad, what worked for you in the beginning of that journey so you can move away more peacefully from that modern cultural lifestyle?
So as you're traveling, what I found to be a beneficial tool is to consciously vote with my money. If I'm going to another country, why would I buy a Coca-Cola there? Their headquarters is in the States, in Atlanta, Georgia. So why would I buy a Coke in another country? And I start to walk around and realize, well, this shop is selling chips, Doritos, and Oreos, and whatever, and this shop is selling homemade, tajadas, or like fried plantains, and some fruit and a natural juice. It's a pretty obvious answer which one I would spend my money on, right? And so as I went around traveling, I wanted to meet the people, find connections, and build connections with people, even if it was temporary, even if I was only, someplace for a month. One of my advices, if you're traveling and you're trying to get this culture, is travel as slowly as possible, honestly. You're going to reduce your spending. You're going to get to know a place much more. Going 3 to 4 days and jumping around to different locations, while it can make a good vacation or an experience, is not going to get to the depth that, if you're listening to this, maybe you're actually trying to go deeper on. So slowing down and getting to know the people you're around, and trying to make sure that where the money is being spent is done in a much more conscious way. And then you can realize, and if you stay somewhere and work online or volunteer at a place, you can find your ways to root in, sink in, get to know people, and then minimize and maximize the value of what you have to offer.
Yeah. What I see also about you, that you also learn to know the environment that you're in, the local plants, and like I even come to you like, hey Justin, I want to make a bowl. How do I do it? Or I need soap. The soap here irritate my skin. How can I? So what plant makes soap for laundry, and someone that is like that's so far from the, let's call it, the typical tourist traveling around. So it's like another great thing that I see you're doing is like getting to know really like the people and the trees and the environment around you?
It's they were here before me, they'll be here after me, right? These coconuts, this coconut behind me, there's a mango tree in front of me. It's definitely important to know the plants around you, because they're our allies. It's all this part of this web of living life as part of living a natural life. And I knew let's just say I knew nothing when I came here. And when I first came here, I had this story where I got these infected wounds on my legs from like a bunch of bites and things that I was just scratching incessantly in the night. And then they all opened up, and at one time I had all these infections from my feet all the way up to my legs. And they looked really bad. In fact, people were recommending that I go to a doctor and take antibiotics for it, but I was stubborn at that point in my life and thinking, my intuition said, no, like the jungle gave me this, the jungle has a medicine for this. I need to find it. And so I started to look around and ask people, and finally a local guy here just said, oh, you need this plant, it's called 𝕨𝕙𝕒𝕟𝕟𝕜, I can bring you some. And I'm like, great, tell me about it. And he brought some from the mountain. He told me exactly how to prepare the medicine, and I used it exactly as he told me, and 3 days later all my infections cleared up.
Wow.
And this and many other experiences I've had with injuries and illnesses, myself and other people, have taught me the resilience of our bodies are so intelligent. They're healing machines that always want to self-heal if we get out of the way and use the plants as our allies. Because going back 50 years, almost all medicines were direct derivatives of plants and fungus. Now, because of synthetic chemistry, stuff I don't quite understand, it's less of a percentage. But all of it is natural and found in nature, right? So why would you extract one chemical from one plant and make a pill out of it, when if you take the plant in its whole form, you get that chemical plus maybe 200 beneficial alkaloids, which also do something in our body. You have a headache. What are you going to turn to? You might get annoyed by your headache and think, I need to take ibuprofen, Tylenol, acetaminophen, whatever. Well, what if I told you that drinking lemongrass tea was as effective as a Tylenol or an ibuprofen? Wouldn't you want to take the lemongrass tea if you knew that was to be true? Well, it is. So there you go. There's your alternative.
Yeah, I love when you're sharing these things, because there's so many like these misconceptions and beliefs that we got from modern culture about stuff that we consume. For example, even cacao. Like there's a lot of things that I heard you say about cacao that I had misconceptions about. So for example, cacao can like dilute your blood and be healthy actually in reducing heart disease and reducing stuff.
Definitely.
And what I heard is like eating too much chocolate is bad. So I mean, it can be true because of the sugar. That's also something.
Mostly the milk. The sugar gets the bad rap, but milk is
yeah.
actually the biggest issue when it comes to cacao. Everything has historical significance. Like, how did we actually get here? If you look at the couple hundred years of European history, you'll find exactly the moment when they decided intentionally to tell people that chocolate was bad for you. And that led to what we know today to be chocolate's a candy bar or it's a junk food, for a couple reasons, right? It's a medicine, and it gets people, you can get high on cacao at higher doses of this. It's a very subtle, natural high, but it's a really feel-good high, increases our libido. It's an aphrodisiac. It opens up our heart, reducing our heart from heart disease, blood pressure, heart attacks, reducing the risk of stroke. It also makes us feel just really good and is a natural antidepressant. So how come we've heard exactly the opposite of that? Well, not to bore you with like 250 years of European history, but the Europeans, specifically the Catholics, the church, they found it to be kind of this dangerous thing that they didn't want their people to consume at higher doses. So they promoted more sugar and to the masses so that people would feel the effects more from the sugar than they would from the cacao. I would take any commercial chocolate factory and they buy more milk and sugar than they buy cacao, right? So is it a chocolate factory or is it a milk and sugar factory that also has an additive of cacao? Or is it a chocolate factory where cacao is always the main ingredient inside and you have no dairy and you have, let's say, low percentages of sugar and or sweetener of choice? So That's the misconception there. And going back to its roots, again, it was the first, as I said before, the first currency here. There was also gods of cacao here. This was something incredibly sacred to the indigenous people of this land. I find you can't even fully understand the complexity of the story of Central America and how we got to today without acknowledging corn and cacao. But looking at cacao as a thread and how did we get to the culture of today, cacao plays a role as well, and I don't think it gets credit for that. When Europe left and started to colonize here, Europe was in the Dark Ages, okay? And the main beverage they were consuming was alcohol, and they were buzzed from morning to night. Then, in the 1500s, comes along cacao.
Because that's how they drink water, right? They drink ale.
Yeah,
instead
because
of water.
in the
water was contaminated.
in the 14 and 1500s, the water was contaminated. So they had to drink alcohol. It was the safest drink to drink.
Yeah.
They didn't have tea, coffee, or cacao. Cacao was the first to arrive. And what did it do? Well, it opened up their heart, it made them feel happier, and all of a sudden you birthed the Age of Reason, which later on led to the age of the Enlightenment and the Renaissance movement. Within 100 years, coffee and tea showed up. So I give all three of these drinks credit because what they cause is linear consciousness, linear thought processes. But tea is from Asia, coffee is from Africa, cacao is from here. And when you look at coffee, it has a somewhat similar story, but different because it came from different continents. Talk about the great Arab empires that invented algebra, calculus, physics advances. Well, they had coffee and Europe didn't. And that's the difference.
The Arab countries, they had mathematics, philosophy, very advanced.
And Europe was in the Dark Ages because Europe has alcohol and they had coffee. Here had cacao. So the cultures you had here were heart-based cultures because coffee works more on the brain and cacao works more on the heart. Works on the heart and the brain, but the highest source of 𝕒𝕝𝕉𝕉 in the world is cacao. And cacao, 𝕒𝕉𝕉 is the main alkaloid, psychoactive alkaloid in cacao that allows its effects to happen. It's a vasodilator, passes more blood flow through our body. And there's nothing in the world that has more 𝕒𝕉𝕉 in it than cacao.
And you can actually, when you come here and you meet the locals, you feel the results of a lineage that was heart-based. Because you can see the whole modern culture, especially in Nicaragua. If you go to Central America, especially in Nicaragua, you feel a country that is not very oriented to modern culture. And very, like the people are very heart-centered, they will help you. They would sit there and talk to you. It's like so basic that you can even not explain it. It's just like you come here and you feel the locals are very heart-centered. So you talked before about JTD, the like a per capita GDP, yeah. So you talked before about GDP. So people want to come, like the GDP here is probably very low, but people want to come to Nicaragua from all places, and when they come, they find this kind of different magic. So it's like, I feel that it's bringing together all these things that we're talking about when you just shift your energy, shift your resources, how you live your life to being more heart-centered.
Exactly. And it's what feels natural, therefore our intuition knows that it's the right thing to do. If I put the image or the story in your mind of how would you feel if tonight we made a bonfire under the stars and we played music and told stories.
Wow.
Amazing. Right? Like you light up and I light up and it's like, yes, let's do that. Explain to me how that entertainment costs any money. No, it doesn't. None at all.
Great conversation, fire, like nothing.
And we could all resonate with that emotion because it's like, yes, that is natural. We're supposed to do more things like that versus, let's go blah, 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 go out into the world and entertain ourselves. And if you're in the modern culture, the modern world, entertainment costs money. You want to go to the movies, you want to go play golf or ski or a bar or name anything, an amusement park. All of it has to cost money. And so in order to, we think, because we were, not our fault, we were grown up and taught this way, that this is the right way to do that. In order to achieve those things, in order to entertain ourselves and to feel like we're playing this game, we need to have money to do so. So that's where we lost it. It's like, fair point. Okay, money is there. Does it need to be our first or second or even third priority? Does it need to be there? And it doesn't. Because doing whatever we want to do and valuing their time, That's why I say that fire, sitting around playing music and telling stories, that's maximizing our time. And as a result, it's going to maximize our health. It's going to optimize our health. Health is a spectrum, and it's not binary. As much as the Western medicine model wants us to believe that you're either healthy or you're sick, it doesn't work like that at all. It's a huge spectrum, and always we're somewhere in it, moving from optimal health to less health. And only when you get to this range are you sick. So if you're here and you're just outside of sick, a doctor would be like, oh, you're healthy. But no, you're clearly not if you're all the way down here. So when I say health, I mean optimizing our health. Does it mean we'll never get sick? No, because sickness is also our body's way of healing itself. But it's staying closer to this optimal side, and then we're not sick, or we're less sick, or we don't get these diseases, these chronic diseases that affect so many millions, hundreds of millions of people all over the world, and as a result of that, diminishing the time that we actually have, which doesn't support the flame of happiness and peace and security and wellness. And these are all of these threads you start pulling off are all centered around what does it actually mean to be a natural person, and how to actually achieve that in today's modern world.
Yeah, and I can even when I come to this island, I feel from people this health. And I feel what you're talking about, the spectrum of the health is very high. You can feel it because they're natural, they drink natural water, they jump here into the lake every day. Yeah. They live mostly, like not completely, but more natural lifestyle with a lot of jam sessions and cacao drinking. So Justin, I'm really glad we were talking about it. Just to wrap this up, you are here for 6 years. What do you see for the next year? What do you see where this is going for you?
Oh, more abundance for everybody. More trees. We're going to plant so many more trees here this year. I'm so excited about that. Been planting trees for the last 6 years here, putting down roots in a place that's actually a paradise, protecting the water and conserving it to make sure that it's there for the next, not 1 year, but for the next 50 to 100 years, for that all the generations that precede me are going to also continue to come to this paradise and realize what it is, that it is a paradise, and that maybe all be healthy. I put a lot of onus on health. I put a lot of my attention on the quality of health, because it's not just physical, it's emotional, and it's spiritual. And it's a lot of what goes on in our bodies and in our brains and in our communities that promote the most optimal health. And when we align physical health, emotional health, and spiritual health, and you align that with nature, authentic relationships, healthy food, and awareness and rest, wow, it's you sometimes I wake up feeling, and I'm not even shy to say this, I wake up feeling I'm the happiest person in the world. Someone has to be the happiest person in the world. Yeah. Why can't it be me? Yeah. Why does somebody else have to be the happiest person in the world? And you know what I have that somebody with $1 billion doesn't have?
What?
I have enough. And if you're hoarding the wealth, you never have enough. So you're always
scarcity mindset.
Exactly.
Trying to get more and more.
So that's my wish. My wish is abundance for everybody. Abundance in what matters the most. Abundance in health, happiness, love, family, food sovereignty. Abundance in all of those things.
Yeah. Wow, thank you, Justin. That's really warmed the hearts, and I really glad I interview you, because I know that you're not just talking about it, you're actually doing it, and you're educating people here, and you're spreading the seeds of this wisdom, of this knowledge that we can do something else than modern culture. So I really appreciate your work and the stand that you're taking and your journey, man. You know, taking all your stuff, landing here, and you're making it work, and that's important. I'm glad we're doing this interview so more people can see that, and more communities, and just know that it's possible to create this little paradise where you are, and it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be all roses and rainbows, but it's a lot of hard work. But you know, that's where we're going with Next Culture, and it's happening. And I'm glad to meet people like Justin here in the island and hang out with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have anything less that you want to say before we end this interview?
I don't know, man. Everything that's coming to my mind right now just sounds super cliche. But I just want to I just want to share that I'm happy we finally got down to sit down and talk about this stuff. I think that I hope that everybody receives it well, and that we can all start changing ourselves so that we can change other people. Actually, I have one that's a quote from not myself. I heard this many times,
Go.
that all of the generations that came before us and all of the generations that will come after us, they live within inside of us. So when we heal ourselves, we heal humanity. When we free ourselves, we free humanity.
Wow.
We're not going to change the world as long as if we don't change ourselves. And if we change ourselves, we are changing the world, even if it doesn't look like we are.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for these words. Thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to, if you're watching this on YouTube, to subscribe and hit the bell so you can notify when more interviews like this come up. And we're here taking a stand for next culture. So you're welcome to comment stuff below and to spread this video, to spread what else is possible. Thank you again for watching, and see you.
Sababa.
𝕨𝕐𝕝𝒔𝒟𝕜.